On this day in Tudor history, the 14th of November 1539, a man of God was executed at the gate of his own abbey. His name was Hugh Faringdon, Abbot of Reading, a scholar, royal chaplain and faithful servant of the church, condemned as a traitor and hanged like a criminal. His crime? Remaining loyal to the spiritual authority of the Pope and refusing, even under pressure, to betray his conscience. He was beatified centuries later, in 1895, as Blessed Hugh Faringdon, one of the many martyrs of Henry VIII's Reformation. But his story and his death remind us just how brutal that Reformation could be. I'm historian and author Claire Ridgway, and let me tell you more about this Tudor abbot. Hugh was born Hugh Cook, probably in Faringdon, Berkshire, from where he took his religious name. By the year 1500, he was already a Benedictine monk at Reading Abbey, one of the wealthiest and most prestigious monasteries in England. When the previous abbot died in 1520, Hugh was chosen to succeed him. Under his leadership, Reading Abbey flourished. Its grammar school became famous for its high standards. Humanist scholars like Edward Cox taught there, and noble families sent their sons to be educated under Hugh's guidance. He was not some distant abbot. He was respected, capable, and even connected to the royal court. By 1532, he'd been appointed a royal chaplain to Henry VIII, and he welcomed the king to Reading several times. For years, he managed to walk the fine line between faith and loyalty, between Rome and the Tudor throne. Hugh was known as a conservative. He preferred the old ways of the church, but he wasn't reckless. He took the oath of supremacy, recognising Henry as head of the Church of England, and in 1536 even agreed to the dissolution of the lesser monasteries. Perhaps, as historian Claire Cross has suggested, he believed that larger, wealthier abbeys like Reading would be spared. And Hugh had been a royal chaplain after all. He'd served faithfully, said a requiem mass after Queen Jane Seymour's death, and attended her funeral. He was no rebel, no loud critic of the king, just a man trying to hold his community together in a world where loyalty and survival were increasingly impossible to balance. But the noose was tightening. In 1538, Crown officials arrived to inventory the abbey's relics. Hugh cooperated, but he refused to surrender the abbey itself. Perhaps he still hoped that reason or faith would prevail. It didn't. By 1539, the winds of reform had become a storm. Someone reported to Thomas Cromwell that Abbot Faringdon was selling abbey produce to the king's disadvantage. It sounds petty, a pretext almost, but it was enough. Hugh was arrested and sent to the Tower of London. While he languished there, his abbey, the home he'd served for 2 decades, was suppressed. When his trial came, the charges were damning. He was accused of upholding papal supremacy, of owning books against the king's supremacy and the annulment of his marriage, and of holding on to relics that should have been handed over to royal commissioners. Among them was said to be the hand of St. Anastasius, a sacred relic that symbolised the very faith that Henry was now determined to destroy. With him stood 2 others, John Rugg, a fellow monk, and John Aynon, a priest from St. Giles's Church in Reading. All 3 were found guilty of high treason. And on the 14th of November 1539, they were led from their cells to the gate of Reading Abbey, the very heart of the community that Hugh had built, and there before the people they met their deaths. The chroniclers tell us little detail, perhaps because it was too awful to watch. Hugh Faringdon, a man in his 60s, was hanged, drawn and quartered at the Abbey gate, his own abbey. His body was mutilated, as was the punishment for traitors at the time, though he'd harmed no one, fought no rebellion and spilt no blood. His only defiance had been spiritual. According to the martyrologist Bede Cam, Hugh went to his death proclaiming his loyalty not to the king but to his faith. He declared his fidelity to the Holy See, the common faith, he said, of those who had the best right to declare the true teaching of the English Church. These weren't the words of a traitor, but of a man who believed to his last breath that he was dying for the truth. The executions at Reading sadly echoed others across the country. The dissolution of the monasteries was not just about wealth or reform, it was about power and control over the souls of England. Men like Hugh Faringdon stood in the way of that, and they paid the price. In 1895, more than 3.5 centuries later, Pope Leo XIII beatified Hugh Faringdon, John Rugg and John Eynon, recognising them as martyrs who died for conscience and faith. Today, if you visit the ruins of Reading Abbey, you can still stand where they died, beneath the weathered stones of the old gate, and remember the abbot who faced a tyrant's justice with a saint's courage. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this rather sad story, please do like, subscribe and ring the bell for more moments from Tudor history. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.